Alright, a very good morning, class. And for today, we are starting with the first chapter of your text, Vistas, titled The Third Level by Jack Finney. It is a work of fiction, alright, a work of make believe. It's a very interesting short story that deals with time travel, alright, that deals with the connection between space and time and how man in the modern world is looking to get away from the stress, from the pressure, and the way he seeks his escape from reality. Alright? I wouldn't give much clue into the story because as you read along, it'll be much more interesting to unfold each and every aspect of the story. So, with this, let's go through the text line by line and get in depth detail about what this story is actually about. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven, and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two. But I say there are three because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. Yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at the Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream wish fulfillment. He said I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. And that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape. But they don't wander down into any third level at the Grand Central Station. So, here's the situation, alright? There is what everyone believes, what is the truth, that there are only two stations, only two levels at the Grand Central Station, alright? The New Haven and the Hartford railways present a set of timetable that shows that there are only two stations, level 1 and level 2. But our narrator, that is Charlie, says that there are three. He swears that he has been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. And he's not talking out of his hat. He's claiming that in front of a psychiatrist, alright, in front of a professional evaluator. He's stating that there is a third level. And his wife is present with him at the office of the psychiatrist, who is also a friend. And he says that the third level that you are talking about, it's all in your mind, all right? It's just wish fulfillment, it's wishful thinking, it's your imagination. And I think that you are unhappy. And when he says that Charlie is unhappy, his wife becomes angry. But then he explains further. The psychiatrist says that modern world is full of stress, all right? It is full of insecurity, it is full of fear, war. So this is his escape from reality. To which Charlie says that obviously, who doesn't want to escape, right? But nobody talks about walking into the third level at the Grand Central Station. I have actually been there. But that's the reason, he said. All my friends all agreed. Everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refuge from reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather didn't need any refuge from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful in his day. From all I hear, and he started my collection. It's a nice collection too. Blocks of four of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. Anyway, here's what happened at Grand Central. One night, last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from Grand Central Station because it's faster than the bus. Now, I don't know why this should have happened to me, I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I'm wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Louisa, my wife. So, when the psychiatrist talks about an escape from reality, all right, Charlie says that there are other ways, all right, there are other ways, my friends. They have other ways of escape. Everybody wants to escape. Some collect stamps, all right. Even my grandfather used to collect stamps. He got me started on the stamp collection. But what I am telling you is different, all right. This is not the escape I am looking for. And then he starts explaining about the events of the day that led him to claim that there was a third level. He said that one day he worked late and he decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it was faster than the bus. All right. And then he goes on to introduce himself. He says, I'm Charlie. I'm just an ordinary man named Charlie. I'm 31 years old. I was simply wearing a simple suit with a straw hat and a fancy band. I passed a dozen people and I wasn't trying to escape anything, all right? I wasn't trying to escape from fear. I wasn't trying to escape from insecurity. All I wanted to do was get home to Louisa, my wife. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level, where you take the train like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I've been out in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on the 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. So he says that like any other normal day, I walked down a flight of stairs, all right, and then I got lost. And it's not something out of the ordinary. People always tend to get lost at Grand Central Station because there are so many doors and so many corridors. And this was not the first time that I got lost. There was a time when I walked a tunnel that was a mile long and ended up in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. There was another time when I came out of another place. And he says that Grand Central is such a place that feels as if it's like a living being, like a tree, and it's always growing out new corridors. People are always getting lost there. Temporarily, of course. And it wasn't a big deal. There's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square and another to Central Park. And maybe, because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward. And I thought that was wrong. But I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps, and I didn't pass a soul. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead that means open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. So it was all by accident, all right, that he stumbled upon the third level of the Grand Central Station. He just lost his way along while he was coming down to the second level of the Grand Central Station. And somehow he entered a very weird sort of a tunnel. It was very quiet. It looked all wrong. But as he walked along the tunnel, he could hear voices up ahead. So he went along and he actually reached the third level of the Grand Central Station, which does not exist. For a moment, I thought I was back at the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. And the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. The lights were dim and sort of flickering. Then I saw why. They were open flame gas lights. So when he reached the station, the third level, he actually thought that it was the second level. But then he slowly realized that this is a different room altogether. The room was smaller. There were fewer ticket windows. Even the clothes they were wearing were all wrong, alright? They looked antique. And even the light was flickering. When he looked closely, it wasn't an electric light, but actual gas light, alright, which was used in the olden days. There were brass spittoons on the floor. Now, spittoons are where people used to spit, all right? Before, in the olden days, people used to chew tobacco, and spit would collect all over the mouth, and there were brass spittoons kept here and there, public spaces where they would go and throw in the juice or the tobacco, if you must. And across the station, a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch, and frowned. He wore a derby hat, a black four-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. When I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1990 something, I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy mustaches in my life. A woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her buttoned shoes. Back of her, out of the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small Courier and Ives locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack. And then I knew. To make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. It was the World, and the World hasn't been published for years. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. I found that front page since in the public library files, and it was printed June 11, 1894. So everything around that room seemed strange. The spittoons, alright, the ticket clerks wearing antique uniforms. And then suddenly he saw a man, alright, sporting a gold watch, wearing a four-button black suit with tiny lapels and a big handlebar mustache. And then he looked around and saw everyone was dressed in the same way. He found it very strange. Then he saw a woman who was dressed in a way with the fashion which was not followed today. It was very old fashioned, it was antique fashion. Then he saw a locomotive, all right, an old style locomotive. And then he knew what was happening. Still, just to make sure, he went to a stand where a boy was selling newspaper, and he could see that the newspaper was named The World, which had not been in existence for a very long time now. And he had only seen that paper in libraries, all right. It wasn't published anymore. He looked at the date, and the date read June 11, 1894. I turned towards the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go in the year 1894. And I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns, and tremendous trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out on the lawns, the men smoking cigar and talking quietly, the women waving palm leaf fans, with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there, with the First World War still 20 years off, and World War II over 40 years in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. So now he understands where he is at. He has actually found a time portal. He is standing at a station which is still dated June 11, 1894. He wanted to get his wife, Louisa, and visit a place called Galesburg, Illinois. It was such a beautiful place till now. And in 1894, it was a heaven for anyone who wanted to reside there. It was 20 years before the First World War and 40 years before the Second World War. And he knew that he was going to have such a great time there. The clerks figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hatband, but he figured the fare. And I had enough for 2 coach tickets one way. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. He nodded at the bills. "That ain't money, mister," he said. "And if you are trying to skin me, you won't get very far." And he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays, and different looking. I turned away and got out fast. There's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. So he asked the ticket clerk, and the ticket clerk looked at his fancy hat, and still he did his job. He told him the fare for 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. He had enough money, but when the ticket clerk saw the money, he told him that ain't money, all right? This is not money. Don't try to cheat me. Then he realized that this is 1894. The money he has right now doesn't exist in that year, and it's of no value. So he quickly ran out, because he knew that if he got caught, he could be jailed. And jail is not a place to be it the modern era or the long gone by era of 1894. And that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day during lunch hour, I drew $300 out of the bank, nearly all we had, and brought old style currency. That really worried my psychiatrist friend, by the way. You can buy old money at almost any coin dealers, but you have to pay a premium. My $300 brought less than 200 in old style bills, but I didn't care. Eggs were 13 cents a dozen in 1894. But I never again found the corridor that leads to the 3rd level at the Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. Louisa was pretty worried when I told her all this, and didn't want me to look for the 3rd level anymore. And after a while I stopped. I went back to my stamps. But now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proof that the 3rd level is still there. My friend Sam Wiener disappeared. Nobody knows where. But I sort of suspected, because Sam's a city boy, and I used to tell him about Galesburg. I went to school there, and he always said he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is, all right, in 1894. So he got out the next day. He took out all his savings, all right, amounting to $300, and converted it into old currency, for which he got around $200 of old currency. But he wasn't worried, because once he gets to 1898, that $200 is going to be a lot more in value. He can get a lot of things. He can get settled with that $200. But his psychiatrist friend was worried. His wife was worried. She did not want him to look for that 3rd level anymore. And so he stopped. Already gave up the idea. And he went back to stamp collecting, Charles. But recently, not only Charles, but even his wife Louisa have started looking for the 3rd level. Why, you ask? Because it so happens that his friend Sam Wiener had disappeared. Nobody knows where. But Charles says that, "I know that he is in that place. He has found the 3rd level, and he has gone back to 1898. Because he was a city boy, and I had always told him about Galesburg, and he always wanted to go there." And then he gives his reason why he believes so. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy and use them to mail envelopes to themselves on the very first day of the sale, and the postmarks prove the date. The envelope is called a first day cover. They are never opened. You just put a blank paper in the envelope. So one day, he says, he gives his proof as to why he knows that his friend Sam Wiener is in 1898. One day, as he was going through his stamp collection, he took out what is known as a first day cover. Now, first day cover भनेको स्ट्याम्प चाहिँ कस्तो हुँदो रहेछ, जब एउटा नयाँ स्ट्याम्प रिलिज हुन्छ, जस्तो रिलिज हुन्छ त्यस्तै स्ट्याम्प कलेक्टरले के गर्छ, त्यसलाई आफ्नै एड्रेसमा पोस्ट गर्छ, सो द्याट द डेट इज मेन्सन्ड. पोस्ट अफिस स्ट्याम्प लगाउँदाखेरि डेट लगाइदिन्छ, एन्ड द्याट इज हाउ दे क्यान प्रुभ द्याट दिस इज अ फर्स्ट डे स्ट्याम्प. एन्ड त्यो चिठीहरू चाहिँ नर्मली खाली हुन्छ अरे, इट्स एम्टी, राइट, इट्स एम्टी, नो बडी puts any letter inside. आफैलाई लेखेको हो, it's just to prove that the stamp is released on such and such date. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that shouldn't have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather. So one day, जस्तो उसले first day coverहरू हेर्दै बसिरहेको थियो, he saw one letter that shouldn't have been there. अगाडि थिएन अरे, but it had been mailed to his grandfather at his homes in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said. It had been there since July 18, 1894. The postmark showed that. And yet I didn't remember it at all. The stamp was a 6th cent, dull brown, with a picture of President Garfield. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there till I took it out and opened it. The paper inside wasn't blank. It read. So normally के हुन्थ्यो, like I said, first day stamp जस्तो रिलिज हुन्छ आफ्नो एड्रेसमा हालेर पठाउँथ्यो एन्ड कलेक्ट गरेर राख्थ्यो, बिकज लेटर कहिले हुन्थेन पनि. बट दिस ही फाउन्ड इट स्ट्रेन्ज बिकज अगाडि त्यो कलेक्सनमा थिएन अरे यो स्ट्याम्प चाहिँ. एन्ड सो ही ओपन्ड इट एन्ड स्ट्रेन्जली इट वाज एन एम्प्टी. Inside was a letter which read, Charlie. It was addressed to him, all right? From 1894, it was addressed to Charlie. Charlie, I got to wishing that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it's true. I found the third level. I've been here 2 weeks, and right now, down the street at the Dailies, someone is playing a piano, and they are all out on the front porch singing, Seeing Nellie Home. And I am invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it. Believe me. It was actually a letter from his friend Sam Wiener, who had written him a letter from 1894, and it read that, when you told me about the third level, I thought that I wished that you were right. Then slowly I started believing that you were right. And finally I found the place and I knew you were right. Right now I'm here in 1894. I've been here 2 weeks and it's such a wonderful place. You and Louisa must not stop looking for the third level. Come here. It is such a wonderful place. You will not regret it, is what it said. The note is signed Sam. At the stamp and coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency that ought to set him up in a nice little hay, feed and grain business. He always said that's what he really wished he could do, but he certainly can't go back to his old business. Not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. His old business? Why? Sam was my psychiatrist. He said he found out that Sam had exchanged $800 in old currency, all right, which would set him up very nicely in 1894. He wanted to do business of grain, and he could do that easily in 1984 because the job he has currently in the modern world is of no use in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894. What does he do? His friend Sam Vader is actually his psychiatrist. The very psychiatrist who in the beginning of the story told Sam that this is just wishful thinking. This is just an escape. And he had actually found the third level and he went to live in the past, and now he is inviting Charlie and Louisa to come on over and not stop looking for the third level. With this, we end the first chapter from your text Vistas, titled The Third Level by Jack Vinay. Have a good day, you all.